The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the Riverton, Wyoming depot, just as the late afternoon sun painted the dusty street gold. And Sarah Newbury pressed one hand against her swollen belly while the other gripped the door frame, knowing that stepping down would change everything forever. She had written 3 letters to Lucas Donovan over the past 6 months, and not one of them mentioned the baby. How could she explain in ink and paper that her husband had died in a mining accident back in Pennsylvania, leaving her alone and 8 months pregnant with nowhere to turn? Her sister had suggested the mail-order bride service, insisting that Sarah needed a fresh start somewhere far from the pitying looks and whispered gossip. The advertisement had been simple: rancher seeking wife, must be hardworking and honest, children welcome. That last part had given her hope, though she knew children welcome probably meant existing children, not one still tucked safely inside her womb. The driver helped her down, his weathered face creasing with concern as he steadied her. "You sure someone is meeting you, madam?" "I hope so," Sarah said softly, smoothing her dark green traveling dress over her belly. She had done her best to hide her condition in the photograph she sent, standing behind a chair with her hands folded in front of her. The dress she wore now was the only one that still fit, let out as far as the seams would allow. Riverton sprawled before her, a growing town that served the ranches scattered across the Wind River Valley. False-fronted buildings lined the main street, and she could see a general store, a saloon, a church with a white steeple, and what looked like a hotel. The air smelled different here, dry and sharp with sage, nothing like the coal smoke and damp earth of Pennsylvania. In the distance, mountains rose like ancient sentinels, their peaks still dusted with snow even though it was June of 1885. Sarah Newbury. She turned to find a man standing a few feet away, hat in his hands. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and dark brown hair that needed cutting. His eyes were a startling shade of blue, and they widened considerably as they took in her very obvious condition. "Yes," she said, lifting her chin. "And you must be Lucas Donovan." He stood frozen for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to her belly and back again. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she refused to look away. This was it, the moment of truth. He would either send her back on the next stage or he would not. "You are pregnant," Lucas said finally, his voice rough. 8 months, Sarah replied, deciding honesty was the only path forward now. "My husband died in a mining collapse 7 months ago. I should have told you in my letters, but I was afraid you would refuse to send for me, and I had nowhere else to go." Lucas continued to stare at her, and Sarah braced herself for anger or rejection. Instead, something shifted in his expression, softening the hard lines around his mouth. "Perfect timing for a father," he said quietly. Sarah blinked, certain she had misheard. "What?" Lucas stepped closer, and she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I have wanted a family for a long time, Miss Newbury. The ranch is doing well, but it is a lonely place. I have been wanting children, hoping for them. The fact that you are already carrying a child, that just means we start our family sooner." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes, unexpected and hot. She had prepared herself for rejection, for humiliation, for being sent away. She had not prepared herself for acceptance. "You mean that?" she whispered. "I do not say things I do not mean," Lucas replied. He held out his hand. "Let me help you to the wagon. You must be exhausted from your journey." Sarah placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his fingers. "Thank you," she managed. "You cannot know what this means to me." "I think I can," Lucas said, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him more closely. Loneliness, she realized. He understood what it meant to have nowhere else to turn. The wagon was sturdy and well-maintained, and Lucas helped her up with careful hands before loading her trunk in the back. As they rolled out of town, Sarah studied the landscape with growing wonder. The valley stretched wide and green, fed by the river that gave the town its name. Cattle dotted the grasslands, and she could see the darker shapes of horses in the distance. "How far is your ranch?" she asked. "About 5 miles north of town," Lucas replied, guiding the horses with easy competence. "I have 300 acres, mostly grazing land. I run about 200 head of cattle and a dozen horses. There is a house, a barn, a chicken coop, and a bunkhouse, though I only have 2 hands working for me right now." "It sounds wonderful," Sarah said honestly. Lucas glanced at her, his expression uncertain. "It is not fancy. The house is small, just 3 rooms. But it is solid and it keeps out the cold in winter." "I am not looking for fancy," Sarah assured him. "I am looking for a home." They rode in silence for a while, and Sarah tried to imagine what her life would be like here. She had grown up in Philadelphia, the daughter of a shopkeeper. Her first husband had been a miner, drawn west by promises of work in the Pennsylvania coal fields. They had been married less than a year when the accident happened, buried alive with 15 other men. The baby had been all she had left of him, and she had been terrified of raising a child alone. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas said, breaking into her thoughts. "Of course. Why did you choose Wyoming? There must have been opportunities closer to home." Sarah considered her answer carefully. "I wanted to go somewhere completely different. Somewhere I could start over without the past following me. Pennsylvania held too many memories, too much pain. I needed to be somewhere new." Lucas nodded slowly. "I understand that. I came here from Missouri 5 years ago for much the same reason." "What were you running from?" Sarah asked, then immediately regretted the question. "I am sorry, that was too personal." "No, it is all right," Lucas said. "If we are going to be married, we should know each other's stories." He paused, his hands tightening slightly on the reins. "I was engaged to be married back in Missouri. Her name was Catherine, and I thought she loved me. But when my father died and I inherited only the debts he had accumulated, she broke off the engagement and married a banker instead. I sold everything to pay what my father owed, and I came west to start fresh." "I am sorry," Sarah said softly. "That must have hurt terribly." "It did," Lucas admitted. "But now I think maybe it was for the best. If she had truly loved me, she would have stayed. And if she had stayed, I would not be here now, and I would not have written to the mail-order bride service, and you would not be sitting beside me." Sarah smiled, touching her belly as the baby kicked. "I suppose there is wisdom in that. My sister says that everything happens for a reason, though I confess I have had trouble believing that lately." "It is hard to see the reasons when you are in the middle of the pain," Lucas agreed. "But looking back, sometimes the pattern becomes clear." The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise, and Sarah caught her breath. The house was indeed small, built of logs with a stone chimney, but it sat in a perfect spot with a view of the mountains and the river glinting silver in the distance. The barn was larger than the house, painted red with white trim, and she could see chickens scratching in a fenced yard. Everything looked neat and well cared for, and she felt a flutter of hope in her chest. "It is beautiful," she said. Lucas looked pleased. "I have been working hard to build something good here, something lasting." He helped her down from the wagon, and Sarah stood for a moment, breathing in the clean air and listening to the unfamiliar sounds. Cattle lowing in the distance, the whisper of wind through grass, the chatter of birds she could not name. It was so different from the city, from the cramped mining town where she had lived with her first husband. This felt like space to breathe, room to grow. "Let me show you inside," Lucas said, offering his arm. The house was simple but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, a bedroom, and a smaller room that Lucas explained he had been using for storage. The furniture was handmade but sturdy, and there were curtains at the windows, faded but neatly mended. "I know it is not much," Lucas began, but Sarah interrupted him. "It is perfect," she said firmly. "Truly, I have lived in much worse." Lucas smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and less careworn. "I am glad you think so. Are you hungry? I am not much of a cook, but I can manage some basic meals." "I am hungry," Sarah admitted, "but please let me help. I am quite good in the kitchen, and I would like to be useful." They worked together to prepare a simple dinner of fried salt pork, beans, and biscuits. Sarah found the rhythm of the work soothing, and she appreciated that Lucas did not hover or treat her like she was fragile. He seemed to understand that she needed to feel capable, needed to contribute. As they ate, sitting at the rough wooden table, Sarah found herself relaxing in a way she had not in months. Lucas asked her about her journey west, and she told him about the train ride and the long stage coach trip, the strange towns and stranger people she had encountered along the way. "When is the baby due?" Lucas asked, his tone casual but his eyes serious. "About 4 weeks, according to the doctor I saw before I left Pennsylvania," Sarah replied. "I know it was foolish to travel this late, but I could not stay where I was." "What happened?" Lucas asked gently. "Besides your husband dying, I mean. What made you so desperate to leave?" Sarah took a breath, deciding he deserved the full truth. "My husband's family blamed me for his death. They said if he had not married me, he would not have been working double shifts to save money for the baby. His mother said horrible things, told me the child was cursed and would bring nothing but sorrow. I was living in a boarding house, using the last of the money from selling our belongings, and I knew I could not raise a baby there alone with everyone looking at me like I was some kind of black widow." Lucas reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "That was not your fault. None of it was." "I know that here," Sarah said, touching her head, "but knowing it and feeling it are two different things." "Then we will work on the feeling part together," Lucas said simply. That night, Lucas insisted Sarah take the bedroom while he made up a bedroll in the main room. She protested, but he was firm. "You need proper rest, especially now," he said. "We will figure out the permanent arrangements later, but for tonight, you take the bed." Sarah was too exhausted to argue further. She changed into her nightgown and lay down on the surprisingly comfortable mattress, her hand resting on her belly. The baby was active tonight, rolling and kicking as if excited by the new surroundings. "We are going to be all right," she whispered to the child. "I promise you, we are going to be all right." She fell asleep listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, feeling safer than she had in a very long time. The next morning, Sarah woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She dressed quickly, braiding her long brown hair, and emerged to find Lucas at the stove. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I did not wake you. Not at all. What time is it?" "About 7. I have already been out to check on the stock and milk the cow. I figured you needed the rest." Sarah felt a twinge of guilt. "I should have been up to help." "You just traveled halfway across the country in your condition," Lucas said firmly. "You are allowed to rest. Besides, we need to talk about some things." They sat down to breakfast, and Lucas laid out his thoughts. "I have been thinking about the practical matters. We should get married as soon as possible if you are still willing. Not because I am trying to rush you, but because people will talk if we are living here together unwed, and I do not want that kind of gossip following you." "I agree," Sarah said. "I am willing to marry you, Lucas. You have been kinder to me than I had any right to expect. Then we will go into town tomorrow and speak to Reverend Matthews. He can marry us at the church." Lucas paused, looking uncertain. I know this is not the romantic courtship you probably dreamed of when you were a girl. I am not a girl anymore, Sarah said quietly. I am a widow who is 8 months pregnant and a long way from home. Romance is not what I need right now. What I need is stability and kindness, and you have already shown me both. But you deserve more than just stability, Lucas said, his blue eyes serious. You deserve to be happy. I cannot promise I will be perfect, but I promise I will try to be a good husband to you and a good father to your child. Sarah felt tears threaten again. Why are you being so kind to me? You do not owe me anything. Maybe not, Lucas agreed. But you are here, and you are alone, and you are carrying a child who will need a father. I wanted a family, Sarah. I wanted children and a wife and a full house. You are giving me a chance at all of that, so maybe the question is, why are you being so kind to me? Sarah smiled through her tears. I suppose we are being kind to each other then. I suppose we are. They went into Riverton the next day, and Reverend Matthews agreed to perform the ceremony that very afternoon. The Reverend's wife, Martha, served as witness along with the owner of the general store, a jovial man named Henry Foster, who seemed delighted to be part of the proceedings. The ceremony was simple and brief. Sarah wore her green traveling dress, and Lucas had put on a clean shirt and his best vest. When the Reverend asked if Lucas would take Sarah to be his lawfully wedded wife, he answered in a strong, clear voice, I will. And when it was Sarah's turn, she looked into Lucas's blue eyes and said the same, I will. Lucas kissed her gently after the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, just a soft press of lips that tasted of promise and new beginnings. Congratulations, Martha Matthews said warmly, hugging Sarah. You have a good man there. I am beginning to realize that, Sarah replied. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury Lucas insisted on. It is our wedding day, he said. We should celebrate properly. Over roast chicken and potatoes, Sarah found herself studying her new husband. He had kind eyes and a strong jaw, and there was something inherently trustworthy about him. She did not love him yet, but she thought perhaps she could, given time. What are you thinking? Lucas asked. That I am grateful, Sarah said honestly, and that I hope I can make you happy. You already have, Lucas replied, just by being here. They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lucas helped Sarah down from the wagon, and this time his hands lingered at her waist. I moved my things into the storage room, he said. It is small, but I can make it work for now. The bedroom is yours. Lucas, Sarah said carefully, we are married now. It would not be improper for us to share the bedroom. Lucas looked at her, surprise and something else flickering in his eyes. I do not want to presume. You are pregnant, and I know we barely know each other. I am pregnant, not made of glass, Sarah said. And I think it would be easier for us to grow closer if we are not living like strangers. I am not suggesting anything beyond sleeping in the same room, but I think it would help us become more comfortable with each other. Lucas considered this. If you are sure, I am sure. That night they lay side by side in the bed, a careful distance between them. Sarah could feel the warmth radiating from Lucas's body, could hear his breathing in the darkness. Can I tell you something? Lucas said quietly. Of course. I am nervous about the baby coming. I do not know anything about babies or childbirth. What if I do something wrong? Sarah turned her head to look at him, though she could only make out his silhouette in the dark. I am nervous too. This is my first child, and I will not pretend I know what I am doing. But we will figure it out together. Together, Lucas repeated. I like the sound of that. Sarah reached out and found his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Thank you for marrying me, Lucas. Thank you for giving my baby a name and a home. Our baby, Lucas corrected gently. From this day forward, This child is ours." Sarah fell asleep holding his hand, feeling less alone than she had since the day her first husband died. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable pattern. Sarah took over most of the cooking and tending of the kitchen garden, while Lucas managed the ranch work with his two hired hands, Tom and Pete, both older cowboys who had worked for Lucas since he bought the property. The men were respectful to Sarah, tipping their hats and calling her Mrs. Donovan, and she made sure they always had hot meals and fresh coffee. As her due date approached, Lucas became increasingly protective. He insisted she not lift anything heavy, that she rest in the afternoons, that she not overwork herself. Sarah found it endearing, even when it was frustrating. "I am pregnant, not dying," she told him one morning when he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. "I know that," Lucas replied, taking the basket from her anyway. "But I also know that childbirth is dangerous, and I want you to have all your strength when the time comes." His concern was not unfounded. Sarah knew that many women died in childbirth, and the thought terrified her. But she tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on preparing for the baby's arrival. Lucas had cleaned out the storage room and moved his bed into it, transforming the space into a small nursery. Together, they had gone to town and bought fabric, which Sarah sewed into tiny gowns and blankets. Lucas had carved a beautiful cradle from pine, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. "You are very talented," Sarah said, running her hand over the cradle's curved sides. "My father was a carpenter before he turned to drink," Lucas explained. "He taught me the basics before things went bad." "I am sorry you lost him that way," Sarah said. "I lost him long before he died," Lucas replied, "but I kept the skills he gave me, and I am grateful for that much." They grew closer as the days passed, learning each other's habits and preferences. Lucas liked his coffee strong and black. Sarah preferred tea in the afternoons. Lucas was an early riser, up before dawn to tend the animals. Sarah liked to stay up late, reading by lamplight. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their hopes, their fears. Lucas told her about building the ranch from nothing, about the hard winters and the droughts, about the satisfaction of watching something grow from your own work. Sarah told him about her life in Philadelphia, about her father's shop and her mother who died when she was 12. She told him about her first husband, careful to be honest but not maudlin. "Did you love him?" Lucas asked one night as they lay in bed. "I thought I did," Sarah admitted, "but we were so young and we barely knew each other when we married. I think I loved the idea of him more than the man himself." "Does that sound terrible?" "No," Lucas said. "It sounds honest." "What about Catherine?" Sarah asked. "Did you love her?" "I thought I did too," Lucas replied, "but real love would not have disappeared the moment money became a problem. I think I loved the life I imagined with her, not who she actually was." "We were both fools then," Sarah said with a small smile. "Or maybe we just had not met the right person yet," Lucas suggested, his voice soft in the darkness. Sarah's heart skipped. "Is that what you think is happening here? We are meeting the right person." Lucas turned to face her, his hand reaching out to cup her cheek. "I think it could be if we let it. I know we married for practical reasons, but I find myself caring for you more each day, Sarah. I wake up happy because you are here. I look forward to coming back to the house because I know you will be waiting. I think about you when I am working, wonder if you are resting, if the baby is active, if you are happy." "Lucas," Sarah whispered, covering his hand with hers, "I care for you too. More than I expected to. You have been so good to me, so patient and kind." "Then maybe we can let this be more than just a practical arrangement," Lucas said. "Maybe we can let ourselves fall in love." "I think I already am," Sarah confessed. "Falling in love with you, I mean." Lucas kissed her then, a real kiss, deep and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Sarah was breathless. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Lucas admitted. "Then why did you wait so long?" Sarah asked, smiling. "Because I wanted you to be ready. I wanted you to want it too." "I want it," Sarah assured him. "I want you." They kissed again, and Sarah felt warmth spread through her body, a feeling she had not experienced in a long time. When Lucas pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. "I should stop," he said roughly. "I do not want to hurt you or the baby." "You will not," Sarah said. "The midwife in Pennsylvania told me it was safe as long as I was comfortable." "Are you sure?" Lucas asked, his hand coming to rest gently on her swollen belly. "I am sure," Sarah replied. They made love slowly and carefully, Lucas treating her like she was precious and fragile and beloved. Afterward, Sarah lay in his arms, feeling more content than she could ever remember being. "I love you," Lucas whispered against her hair. "I know it is fast, but I do. I love you, Sarah." "I love you too," Sarah replied, and knew she meant it with her whole heart. 3 days later, Sarah woke in the pre-dawn darkness with a sharp pain in her lower back. She lay still for a moment, trying to decide if it was just the usual discomfort of late pregnancy or something more. Then another pain came, wrapping around her belly like an iron band, and she knew. "Lucas," she said, shaking his shoulder. "Lucas, wake up." He was awake instantly, sitting up. "What is wrong?" "The baby is coming," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm even though fear was rising in her throat. Lucas was out of bed immediately, lighting the lamp. "How far apart are the pains?" "I do not know. I just woke up." Another contraction came, stronger this time, and Sarah gasped. "I am going to ride to town and get the midwife," Lucas said, pulling on his pants. "Martha Matthews said there was a woman named Mrs. Fletcher who helps with births." "No," Sarah said, grabbing his hand. "Do not leave me alone. Send Tom or Pete." Lucas nodded. "You are right. I will send Tom. He can ride fast." He pulled on his boots and shirt. "I will be right back, I promise." Sarah lay back against the pillows, breathing through another contraction. She had heard stories about childbirth, about the pain and the blood and the danger, and now she was facing it herself. She was terrified, but she also felt a strange sense of calm. This was happening, and she would get through it because she had to, because her baby was depending on her. Lucas returned within minutes, his hair disheveled. "Tom is riding to town now. Mrs. Fletcher should be here within the hour." He sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. "How are you doing?" "I am scared," Sarah admitted. "I am here," Lucas said firmly. "I am not going anywhere. We are in this together, remember?" Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand as another contraction came. They were getting stronger and closer together, and she knew this was really happening. There was no going back. Lucas proved to be a steady presence over the next hours. He helped her walk when the pains got too intense, rubbed her back when she asked, brought her water when her mouth went dry. He did not panic or faint or flee, even when things got difficult. Mrs. Fletcher arrived just as the sun was rising, a capable woman in her 50s with graying hair and gentle hands. She examined Sarah and pronounced that everything was progressing normally. "First babies usually take a while," she said. "Get comfortable, dear. This could be a long day." It was. The sun climbed high in the sky, and Sarah labored through contraction after contraction. Lucas stayed by her side the entire time, never once suggesting he should leave or that this was women's work. He let her squeeze his hand until it must have ached, and he whispered encouragement when she felt like she could not go on. "You are doing so well," he told her. "You are so strong, Sarah. I am in awe of you." As the afternoon wore into evening, the contractions became overwhelming. Sarah cried out with each one, and Mrs. Fletcher checked her progress. "It is time to push," the midwife announced. "On the next contraction, I want you to bear down." Sarah did as she was told, gripping Lucas's hand with one hand and the bed frame with the other. She pushed with all her strength, feeling like she was being torn apart. "Good," Mrs. Fletcher encouraged. "Again on the next one." Sarah pushed again and again, losing track of time and everything except the overwhelming need to bring her baby into the world. Lucas stayed at her shoulder, supporting her, telling her she could do it, that he believed in her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mrs. Fletcher said, "One more push should do it." Sarah gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed with everything in her. She felt a tremendous release, and then the room was filled with the sound of a baby crying. "It is a boy," Mrs. Fletcher announced, holding up a red-faced, squalling infant. "A healthy baby boy." Sarah fell back against the pillows, exhausted and elated. Mrs. Fletcher cleaned the baby quickly and then placed him on Sarah's chest. "Hello," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one." The baby was perfect, with a head full of dark hair and a scrunched-up face that was already looking around. Sarah had worried that she might not feel connected to the child, that the trauma of losing her first husband might have damaged something in her. But the moment she held her son, she felt love crash over her like a wave. "He is beautiful," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand, and the infant's fingers wrapped around his thumb. "Look at that. He's got a good grip." Mrs. Fletcher finished the rest of the birth process and helped Sarah get cleaned up and changed into a fresh nightgown. Then she showed Sarah how to nurse the baby, guiding him to latch on. "He is a natural," the midwife said approvingly. "And so are you. You did very well today, Mrs. Donovan." "Thank you," Sarah said, unable to look away from her son's face. "Thank you for everything." Mrs. Fletcher packed up her supplies. "I will check on you tomorrow to make sure you are both doing well. Rest as much as you can and let your husband help you." After the midwife left, Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, still staring at the baby in wonder. "What should we name him?" he asked. Sarah had been thinking about this for weeks. "I would like to name him after my father, if that is all right with you. His name was James." "James," Lucas repeated, trying it out. "James Donovan, I like it." "And maybe your father's name as a middle name," Sarah suggested. To honor him as well, Lucas looked surprised. "My father's name was William. Are you sure?" "I am sure," Sarah said. "James William Donovan." "That is a strong name," Lucas said. He bent and kissed Sarah's forehead. "You were amazing today. I have never seen anything like that. You were so strong and brave." "I did not feel brave," Sarah admitted. "I felt terrified." "That is what bravery is," Lucas said. "Being terrified and doing it anyway." That night, Sarah lay in bed with baby James sleeping in the cradle beside her and Lucas in a chair nearby, refusing to go sleep in the other room. "You should rest," Sarah told him. "You must be exhausted." "I am not leaving you two alone," Lucas said firmly. "What if you need something?" "You are a good father already," Sarah said softly. "He is my son," Lucas replied simply. "From this moment forward, he is mine just as much as he is yours. No one will ever tell him any different." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again. "Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for everything you have given us." "You have given me just as much," Lucas said. "You have given me a family." The first few weeks with a newborn were harder than Sarah had anticipated. James needed to eat every few hours, day and night, and Sarah was constantly exhausted. But Lucas was an enormous help, changing the baby's diapers, walking with him when he fussed, taking him in the mornings so Sarah could get a bit more sleep. The ranch hands, Tom and Pete, proved to be surprisingly helpful as well, bringing fresh eggs and milk to the house, offering to run errands in town, and generally being supportive. Martha Matthews came to visit one afternoon, bringing a basket of food and baby clothes her own children had outgrown. "How are you managing?" she asked, settling into a chair while Sarah nursed James. "Better than I expected," Sarah admitted. "Lucas has been wonderful. I do not know what I would do without him." "You chose well," Martha said. "Lucas Donovan has a good heart. Everyone in town respects him." "I got lucky," Sarah said. "I was so afraid when I came here, afraid he would reject me because of the baby. Instead, he welcomed us both." "That is love," Martha said simply. "Real love does not count costs or keep score, it just gives." As summer turned to fall, life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. James thrived, growing plump and happy. Sarah recovered her strength and took on more of the household duties. Lucas worked long hours preparing for winter, mending fences and making sure they had enough hay stored for the cattle. In the evenings, they would sit together in the main room, Sarah mending or sewing while Lucas worked on some project or other, and James slept in his cradle nearby. Sometimes they would talk, sharing stories or making plans. Sometimes they just enjoyed the comfortable silence. "I have been thinking," Lucas said one evening in late September, "we should have a real wedding celebration. I know we got married quickly and quietly, but I would like everyone to know how proud I am to be your husband." "You do not have to do that," Sarah protested. "I want to," Lucas insisted. "I want the whole town to meet you properly and celebrate with us." Martha said we could hold a party at the church social hall. Sarah smiled. "If it is important to you, then I would love that." The party was held on a sunny October afternoon, and what felt like the entire population of Riverton turned out. There was food and music, and Lucas stood up in front of everyone and introduced Sarah as his wife, his voice full of pride. "She is the best thing that ever happened to me," he said, his arm around her waist. "She and James both. I am the luckiest man in Wyoming." Sarah blushed, but could not help smiling. She had never expected to be this happy, not after everything that had happened. But here she was, surrounded by friendly faces, married to a good man with a healthy baby in her arms. Life had given her a second chance, and she was determined not to waste it. That night, after they returned home and put James to bed, Lucas pulled Sarah into his arms. "Thank you for today," he said. "I should be thanking you," Sarah replied. "You are the one who organized everything." "I mean thank you for coming here," Lucas clarified. "For taking a chance on a lonely rancher you had never met. Thank you for letting me be James's father. Thank you for becoming my wife. Thank you for making this house a home." "I love you," Sarah said, standing on her toes to kiss him. "I love you so much, Lucas." "I love you too," Lucas replied. "More than I ever thought possible." They made love that night with a passion and tenderness that came from truly knowing each other, from having built something real together. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Sarah felt a sense of peace she had never experienced before. "Are you happy?" Lucas asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Sarah replied honestly. "Are you?" "Beyond measure," Lucas said. "You and James are everything to me." Winter came to Wyoming with a vengeance, bringing bitter cold and deep snow. The ranch was isolated for weeks at a time, but Sarah did not mind. The house was warm and cozy, and she was content to spend her days caring for James and keeping the household running while Lucas tended to the animals and made sure they all survived the harsh weather. James was growing quickly, smiling now and starting to make sounds that almost resembled laughter. Lucas was completely besotted with the boy, spending every spare moment playing with him or just watching him sleep. "He is going to be spoiled," Sarah teased one evening as Lucas bounced James on his knee. "Good," Lucas replied unrepentantly. "He deserves to be spoiled. He is the best baby in the entire territory." "You might be slightly biased," Sarah said, laughing. Not biased, just honest, Lucas countered. On Christmas morning, Sarah gave Lucas a new hat she had bought in town, and he gave her a beautiful shawl made of soft wool. But the real gift was the day itself, spent together as a family, with James sitting up on a blanket playing with a wooden horse Lucas had carved for him. "This is what I always wanted," Lucas said, watching Sarah laugh as James knocked over a stack of wooden blocks. "This exact thing. A family. A home. Someone to love who loves me back." "You have it now," Sarah said, leaning against his shoulder. "We all have it." Spring came eventually, as it always does, and the ranch exploded into life. Calves were born, and the grass turned green, and the river ran high with snowmelt. James was sitting up on his own now, and starting to teeth, which made him cranky but also impossibly cute. Sarah discovered she was pregnant again in late April. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not said anything until she was sure. When she told Lucas, his face lit up like the sun. "Really?" he asked, his hand going immediately to her still flat belly. "Really," Sarah confirmed. "The baby should come in December around Christmas time." Lucas picked her up and spun her around, then set her down quickly. "Sorry, I should not be tossing you around when you are pregnant." "I am fine," Sarah assured him, laughing. "You can be happy. I am happy." "Another baby," Lucas marveled. "James is going to be a big brother." This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Sarah was not carrying the weight of grief and uncertainty. She felt well and strong, and she continued to manage the household throughout the summer and fall. James learned to crawl and then to pull himself up on furniture, keeping everyone busy chasing after him. "He is going to be walking before the new baby comes," Lucas predicted one evening as James cruised along the edge of the sofa. "Probably," Sarah agreed. "And then we will have 2 mobile children to keep track of." "I cannot wait," Lucas said, and he meant it. Sarah went into labor on a cold December night, 2 weeks before Christmas. This time, Lucas knew what to expect, and he sent Pete to fetch Mrs. Fletcher while he stayed with Sarah. "You remember how to do this," he told her as she breathed through a contraction. "You are a professional now." Sarah laughed despite the pain. "I do not think anyone is a professional at childbirth." "You are," Lucas insisted. "You are a professional at everything." This labor was shorter than the first, and by mid-morning, Sarah was holding a healthy baby girl with wisps of blonde hair and Lucas's blue eyes. "She is perfect," Lucas said, touching the baby's tiny fingers. "What should we name her?" "I was thinking Elizabeth," Sarah said. "We can call her Lizzie for short." "What do you think?" "Elizabeth Donovan," Lucas said, trying it out. "I think it is perfect, but what about a middle name, Rose?" Sarah suggested. "After my mother." "Elizabeth Rose Donovan," Lucas repeated. "Our little Lizzie." James was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to touch her and bring her his toys. Sarah and Lucas supervised carefully, teaching him to be gentle, and he proved to be a surprisingly good big brother. "He is going to be protective of her," Lucas predicted. "I can already tell." The winter was busy with 2 children, but Sarah had never been happier. The house was full of noise and life, exactly what both she and Lucas had wanted. Tom and Pete had become like family, joining them for Sunday dinners and helping to watch the children when Sarah and Lucas needed a few moments alone. On Christmas morning, with James toddling around on his newly steady legs and Lizzie sleeping peacefully in her cradle, Sarah looked around at her family and felt overwhelming gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, sliding an arm around her waist. "How different my life is from what I thought it would be," Sarah said. "A year and a half ago I was alone and pregnant and terrified. Now I have you and James and Lizzie and this wonderful life. It feels like a dream." "It is not a dream," Lucas assured her. "It is real, and it is ours, and it is going to keep getting better." He was right. The years that followed were full and rich, with hard work and challenges, but also immense joy. James grew into a sturdy, curious boy who loved helping his father with the ranch work. Lizzie was sunshine itself, always laughing and charming everyone she met. Sarah and Lucas's love deepened with each passing year, the initial spark of attraction maturing into something solid and enduring. They learned how to fight fair and forgive quickly, how to support each other through difficulties, and how to celebrate the good times together. When James was 4 and Lizzie was 2, Sarah gave birth to twin boys, Thomas and Peter, named after the loyal ranch hands who had become such an important part of their lives. The ranch prospered under Lucas's careful management, and they were able to expand, buying another 100 acres and increasing their herd. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Sarah into Riverton for a rare evening alone while Martha Matthews watched the children. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, the same place they had eaten on their wedding day, and afterward they walked along the river in the warm summer twilight. "Do you remember when you stepped off that stage?" Lucas asked, holding her hand. "I took one look at you and thought my life was over, that you were going to get back on that stage and leave." "And instead," Sarah prompted. "Instead, you gave me everything I had ever wanted," Lucas said. "You gave me a family and a home and a reason to wake up happy every single morning." "You gave me the same thing," Sarah said. "You saved me, Lucas. I was drowning and you threw me a rope." "We saved each other," Lucas corrected. He stopped walking and turned to face her, the setting sun painting everything gold. "I love you, Sarah Donovan. I loved you 5 years ago when you stepped off that stage, round with child and terrified but trying so hard to be brave. I loved you the first time I held James and realized you had given me a son. I loved you when Lizzie was born and when the twins came. I love you more every single day, and I will love you until the day I die." Sarah stood on her toes and kissed him, tasting salt from her own happy tears. "I love you too, more than words can say." They walked back to the wagon hand in hand, and Sarah thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. She had come to Wyoming running from pain and loss, expecting nothing more than survival. Instead, she had found love and belonging, had built a life richer than anything she could have imagined. When they got home, the children were asleep, and Martha was dozing in the chair. They thanked her and sent her home with a basket of eggs and fresh bread. Then Lucas and Sarah checked on each of their sleeping children before retiring to their own room. 4 children, Sarah marveled as she got ready for bed. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it. Do you want more?" Lucas asked. Sarah laughed. "Ask me again in a year. But Lucas, whether we have more children or not, I want you to know something." "What?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be, with you on this ranch raising our children. This is the life I was meant to have, and I would not change a single thing." "Not even the hard parts?" Lucas asked. "Not even losing your first husband or the difficult journey here? Not even those," Sarah said firmly. "Because they led me here to you, and you were worth all of it." Lucas kissed her deeply, and they made love slowly and tenderly, a celebration of everything they had built together. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and triumphs. James grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, and he began learning the business in earnest. Lizzie was beautiful and headstrong, with a sharp mind and a kind heart. The twins were mischievous but good-natured, always getting into some scrape or another but always looking out for each other. Sarah and Lucas grew older together, their hair going gray, their faces gaining lines, but their love never diminishing. They were fixtures in Riverton, respected members of the community, known for their generosity and their strong family. When James was 16, he asked his father one evening as they worked together mending fence, "Did you ever regret it? Taking on mother when she was pregnant with someone else's child?" Lucas stopped what he was doing and looked at his son, this tall young man who looked so much like Sarah with his dark hair and quick smile. "Never once," Lucas said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You are my son, James. I have never thought of you as anything else. But I am not yours by blood," James pointed out. "Blood does not make a family," Lucas said. "Love does, choice does. I chose to be your father from the moment your mother stepped off that stage. You are mine in every way that matters." James nodded, his eyes bright. I am glad you are my father. And I am glad you are my son," Lucas replied, gripping James's shoulder. "I am proud of the man you are becoming." That night, Lucas told Sarah about the conversation and she cried happy tears. "He has never doubted that you are his father," she said. "Not once. You have been everything to him." "He has been everything to me," Lucas replied. "All of our children have. But James, he was the first. He made me a father. I will always be grateful for that." When Sarah was 40, she discovered she was pregnant one last time. Both she and Lucas were surprised, having assumed they were done having children. But this baby, a girl they named Grace, proved to be a final gift, a late blessing that completed their family in a way they had not even known was missing. 5 children, Lucas marveled as he held newborn Grace, watching his older children crowd around to meet their baby sister. "We have been blessed 5 times over. 6 times, Sarah corrected, touching his cheek. 5 children and you, 6 blessings." As the years turned into decades, the Donovan Ranch became one of the most successful in the region. James took over more and more of the daily operations as Lucas aged, and eventually, James married a sweet girl from town named Amy. They built a house on the property and started their own family, giving Lucas and Sarah grandchildren to spoil. Lizzie married a doctor and moved to Cheyenne, but she visited often with her own growing family. The twins both stayed in Riverton, Thomas becoming a blacksmith and Peter opening a general store. Grace, the baby, surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, dedicating herself to educating the children of the region. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Sarah and Lucas sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over the mountains. Their hair was white now, their bodies slower, but their hands were still clasped together, their love as strong as ever. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Sarah asked. "When I stepped off the stage, perfect timing for a father," Lucas recalled, smiling. "And I meant it. It was perfect timing. You were perfect timing. Everything about you coming into my life was exactly right." "I was so scared," Sarah admitted. "I thought you would send me away." "I could never have sent you away," Lucas said. "The moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. We were meant to find each other, Sarah." "We were," Sarah agreed. She leaned her head on his shoulder, content. "We built something good, did we not?" "We built something extraordinary," Lucas replied. 5 children, 13 grandchildren so far, and a love that has lasted through everything. "Yes, we built something very good indeed." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they could hear the sounds of their family, James and Amy and their children who had come for dinner. Laughter and voices, the clink of dishes being washed, the thump of small feet running across wooden floors. "This is what I dreamed of," Lucas said softly. "All those years ago when I was alone on this ranch, I dreamed of exactly this, a house full of family, a life full of love." "And now you have it," Sarah said. "We have it, together." "Together," Lucas repeated, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. Always together. As the evening deepened into night, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had left Pennsylvania as a desperate widow, pregnant and alone, gambling everything on a man she had never met. She had arrived in Riverton terrified and uncertain, sure that she was making a terrible mistake. Instead, she had found Lucas. She had found love and acceptance and a home. She had found a man who looked at her growing belly and saw not a burden but a blessing, who had claimed her child as his own without hesitation, who had spent 3 decades proving every single day that his love was real and lasting. She had found, in the wilderness of Wyoming, everything she had ever needed. She had found, in the heart of a lonely rancher, the love of her life. And as she sat there on that porch, surrounded by the family they had built together, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that every hard thing she had endured had been worth it. Every tear, every fear, every moment of doubt had led her to this perfect ending, to this life full of love and joy and belonging. "Thank you," she whispered to Lucas. "For what?" he asked. "For saying yes," Sarah replied. "For taking a chance on a pregnant stranger. For loving me. For giving me this life." "Thank you for the same," Lucas said, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "Thank you for stepping off that stage and changing my life forever." They sat together until the stars filled the sky. 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love that would last not just their lifetimes but would echo through the generations that came after them. 5 children, and eventually more than 20 grandchildren, and then great-grandchildren, all carrying forward the legacy of love that Sarah and Lucas had begun on that dusty street in Riverton so many years ago. When they finally went inside, walking slowly with the stiffness of age, the house welcomed them with warmth and light and the voices of family. James helped his father to a chair while Amy brought Sarah a cup of tea. The grandchildren clamored for stories, and Lucas obliged, telling them about the old days, about cattle drives and harsh winters, and how their grandmother had arrived in town carrying their Uncle James. "She was the bravest woman I ever met," Lucas said, his eyes finding Sarah's across the room. "She still is." Sarah smiled back at him, her heart full to overflowing. She had lived a long life, had faced hardships and celebrated triumphs, had raised 5 wonderful children and had loved one extraordinary man. She had been afraid and brave, had failed and succeeded, had lost and found. But through it all, from that moment she stepped off the stage to this moment surrounded by family, she had been loved. Deeply, completely, unconditionally loved by Lucas Donovan, the lonely rancher who had looked at a pregnant stranger and seen not a problem but possibility. And that, Sarah thought as she watched her family together in the warm lamplight, that was the real story. Not the mail-order bride or the pregnancy or even the ranch. The real story was the love, the simple, extraordinary love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning into something that would last forever. Lucas caught her eye again and winked, and Sarah laughed, feeling young again despite her gray hair and lined face. Because love, she had learned, did not age. Love just grew deeper and stronger and more beautiful with time, and theirs had grown into something magnificent. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was finally quiet, Sarah and Lucas lay together in the darkness of their bedroom, the same room where they had spent their wedding night 30 years before. "I love you," Lucas whispered, his voice rougher with age but no less sincere. "I love you too," Sarah replied, taking his hand in hers. "Forever." "Forever," Lucas agreed. And as they drifted off to sleep, still holding hands the way they had on their first night together, both of them knew they had found what so many people spent their entire lives searching for. They had found home. They had found family. They had found in each other the missing piece that made them whole. The mail-order bride and the lonely rancher had become Sarah and Lucas Donovan, partners, lovers, best friends, and the foundation of a family that would continue for generations. Their love story, which had begun with fear and uncertainty, had become the stuff of family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren as an example of what real love looked like. It looked like acceptance, like choosing to love when it would have been easier not to, like showing up every day and doing the work and never giving up even when things got hard. It looked like a man who saw a pregnant woman step off a stage and said, "Perfect timing for a father." It looked like a woman who took a leap of faith and found, at the end of her journey, everything she had ever needed. Their story was complete. Every promise kept, every challenge overcome, every moment of love and laughter and occasional tears woven together into something beautiful and lasting. And as the years continued to roll forward, as their children grew and their grandchildren multiplied, the love that Sarah and Lucas had built remained the foundation upon which it all rested. Perfect timing, Lucas had said all those years ago, and he had been absolutely right. It had been perfect timing for a father, for a family, for a love that would last forever. Perfect timing for everything that really mattered. And they lived happily, completely and wonderfully together for the rest of their long lives. Their love story serving as a beacon of hope and proof that sometimes, even in the wildest, most uncertain circumstances, love finds a way.